John, you have been working with the sheriff's office for some time now. What made you decide to run for sheriff?
Well, it's something I always had a dream or goal to do. When I first was hired by Barbara Pickens, she asked me, "What do you want to do in 20 years?" I said, "I want to be sitting where you're sitting." And she kind of laughed and said, "Well, you got a lot to learn," and that was true at the time. But it's always been a goal of mine. I know it's easy to say, it's kind of cliche, but I felt like the timing was right with Sheriff Carpenter retiring, and I had prepared myself to come to this point and come to this time in my life, my career, and I felt like the timing was right to do it now.
As I mentioned, you have been with the sheriff's office for a number of years. If you will, just tell us a little bit about your background, experience, and so forth.
Okay, yes, Wayne. I've done a little bit of everything. I started out as a correctional officer with the North Carolina Department of Corrections here in Lincoln. I worked at the Lincoln Prison. I've also been a patrol officer. I have been a general investigator. I've investigated everything from fraud to break-ins, many break-ins, death cases, sexual assaults, child abuse, anything and everything I've investigated. I've also been a patrol sergeant. I've also been a field training officer and a senior deputy, and I've also been a patrol lieutenant. And most recently, in the last 3 years, I've been the lieutenant of narcotics.
You have been, of course, over the narcotics investigations. Do you think that Lincoln County has a similar problem to other counties or worse problem than other counties with drugs?
Well, I would say per capita, I would say we have a similar problem as other counties. There's other counties that are much worse than we are. We do have an epidemic of opioid abuse and overdoses that is not just isolated to Lincoln County, but nationwide. However, one thing I want people to understand: we have a lot of drug arrests, and some may say, "Well, we have a bad drug problem," and in some regards, I guess that's true. But because our arrests are high, our property crime in this county is way lower than most other counties, and that's something we're proud of, and that's something we strive to do, and something as sheriff I would continue to be very aggressive on narcotics and illegal drugs, and work within the community to help with it. It's the same issue, but a separate issue with the opioid epidemic.
One of the other candidates, you mentioned that because of the drug arrest, you think that has helped to cut back on some of the property crimes. One of the other candidates gave out some figures that he claimed that crime was on the increase in Lincoln County.
Right.
Is that true?
Well, first of all, you have to look at the category of what you're talking about. Lincoln, for instance, murders, homicides. Lincoln County doesn't have that many. We're fortunate that we don't have a lot of violent crime. So when we do have a little spurt in violent crime, a homicide or two 1 year, yes, it's going to double, triple, quadruple because maybe 2 or 3 years before that we didn't have one. So those numbers need to be looked at in context. But overall, if you look at the Department of Justice crime reporting system, look at our numbers, you can see from 2010 until now, the most recent numbers overall, the crimes that matter to most people, that affect the largest majority of the people in Lincoln County, which are property crimes, have went down about 36% in the last 8 years. And I think that's a direct result of the aggressive narcotics, the aggressive nature we have towards narcotics and the arrests we've made.
You, of course, have been a part of the current sheriff's office under David Carpenter. You have been there for his entire tenure and before. Yes. So obviously, I would assume that you think that the sheriff's office is doing a pretty good job.
Yes, I do.
If you are elected, what about the office? Is there any big changes that you would make? What about personnel? Do you expect most everybody to stay as they are?
No, I don't expect a lot of big changes. With any change in sheriff, you're going to have changes with certain personnel, but that's not something we discuss right now. It'd be something you discuss once the election was over. But generally speaking, we have a great agency and have great officers that work there, and there's it ain't broke, don't fix it, that sort of thing. There's lots of areas that we excel in. I'm not David Carpenter, so I'm not going to be exactly like him in some aspects. But I am a fiscal conservative, and I am hard on drugs and care about the community, and someone that's approachable, and that's how it would be a sheriff. And so in a lot of ways it'd be a lot like we have it now. What I'm looking to do is build on the successes we've had, and it's not really a change election, if you ask me. I think it's just a continuation, and I think that's why I'm best suited for the office, is because I have a long-term vision, and we've had stability for the last 8 years. David Carpenter's taken this agency with the help of the command staff and the line level officers doing the grunt work. Has changed this agency dramatically in the last 8 years. We don't need to take a step back. We don't need to stay stagnant. We need to keep moving forward, and that's what I want to do, and not for the short term, but for the long term.
That leads into my last question. Why you? Why should voters choose you as their sheriff as opposed to the other candidates?
Well, I respect the other candidates. Like I said in the forum last night, anyone can run an office. Anyone can be the sheriff. Not everyone's necessarily going to be qualified, but I have the experience in all facets of the office in law enforcement. It's not necessarily how many years you have, but what you've done in those years. And I would put my resume up against anyone's that's another candidate. But other than that, I lead from the front. You need to have the respect of the officers there. You also need to have respect of the community. And I'm always available, always open. That will continue. During this campaign, I've knocked on lots of doors. I think we totaled up, it's been over 2,000 doors I've knocked on in the last several months. And one of the reasons why I went door to door and talking to people face to face is that's how I am as a detective. That's how I've been as a lieutenant. That's how I've been my entire career. That personal contact, that personal relationship, I want people to know who the sheriff is. They do now, but I want them to know me, not know of me. And I think I have a long-term vision. I can't retire in 4 years. I'm not retired coming back. And I've been in law enforcement and been successful in law enforcement. And I think that sets me apart from the other candidates. And I feel very confident that we can move forward and continue to have a stable, successful, professional sheriff's office.